Hi, this short section is about authorization. This section is not short because authorization is a short and easy topic, but because some parts we are going to cover in other sections. In this lecture, I would like to talk generally about authorization. So first, let's discuss the difference between authorization and authentication. So first, authentication. Authentication is making sure that the user is who he says he is. So when the user says he is Alice, then he has to provide some proof like a password or a smart card or fingerprint or whatever to prove that he is really Alice. That's authentication. On the other hand, authorization is making sure that the user cannot do anything else but what his privileges allow him. His privileges can be his access rights, the rule he has, the group he is in, but the important that he cannot do anything else, only what he's allowed to do. So authentication is a one-time check when the user logs in, but authorization is a constant check whenever the user does some kind of actions. So if the user says he wants to upload a file, then we have to check whether the role what the user has is allowed to upload files or not. Applications always have some kind of authorization concept. They can be very different, but they have the typical building blocks. So we have the application here, and it can have tenants. This could be different companies or different departments at the companies. It can also have roles like administrator, editor, read-only user, whatever. And then it has users, like you or me or whoever uses the application. And then we also have resources, like files or reports, features, rights like read or edit. So these are all some kind of resources. The authorization concept has to be a clear mapping between these elements. So a mapping between these. Basically, rules which tells us who is allowed to do what. It tells us which tenants are allowed to access which files, or whether a specific rule is allowed to create reports or read documentations. It has to be very specific because the application has to be able to check it. Also, the more complex the authorization concept is, the higher the chance that somebody screwed something up. Also, this is something which cannot be dealt with only at the implementation phase. The authorization has to be designed in the designated planning or design or architecture, whatever it's called, phase. But the important is that it has to be started at the very beginning. Sometimes I tested applications when they didn't have really a sensible authorization concept, and they wanted to release the application like a week after our assessment, but the problems we found were so deep in the architecture of the application that it wasn't just possible to fix it with like an if or just adding a few lines of code. They had to go back to the design table and start all over again. For the customer, it was super expensive and immense delay. And with that said, let's start to see some attacks. I can tell you right now that these attacks are usually not technically extremely sophisticated. They are more about finding the weak spot than creating a tricky exploit. It's mostly about tricking the system. But I can assure you they are pretty interesting, so let's start with that in the next lecture. Bye.